Oh, God.
Time to piss off my non-existent subscriber base. Whitewashing has become a hot topic recently, especially with films out like Ghost in the Shell and soon to be out like Netflix's Death Note. I know that some of you think that there's no such thing as whitewashing unless the actor literally puts on black or yellow face, but even then I'm not sure you would, and some of you think that every film with a white person in it is whitewashed, but I hope most of you have a more nuanced perspective on it. However, throughout this back and forth on the internet recently, I have not seen people bring up the simple fact that these films that are tagged as whitewashed, whether they are or not, are doing poorly financially in recent years. I first want you to look at this list of movies that have had some sort of whitewashing controversy in the last decade, from Speed Racer, The Prince of Persia, The Lone Ranger, to Exodus: Gods and Kings. There is a consistent trend for these films that they not only are received critically poor, but more importantly, they do not do well financially. In no way am I blaming whitewashing as being the sole or major reason for these failures, but I want to explore how it plays a role. Now, let us begin with the film that is most fresh in our minds that had a whitewashing controversy surrounding it from day one.
No. What are you?
Ghost in the Shell is a manga by Masamune Shirow that had its initial run in April of 1989 to November of 1990, and was later adapted into a film by Mamoru Oshii in November of 1995. It was heavily inspired by Blade Runner, touching on similar themes of identity, humanity, evolution, and Jean Baudrillard's simulation simulacra. However, Ghost in the Shell touches on this in a Japanese and non-Western way. The original manga was made in the late 80s, which was a very significant decade for the Japanese. Japan was a nation that had been stripped from their military after World War II and poured everything into becoming the tech giants of the world. And that they did. Any and all major tech was coming out of Japan in the 80s and 90s. From cars, video game consoles, to televisions, they were the tech kings. And unlike other developed nations at the time, Japan had heavy tech integration with day-to-day life that took other countries at least another decade or two to catch up to. That is why Ghost in the Shell, unlike Blade Runner, focuses more on cybernetics and augmentation and questions at what point do we lose our humanity, whereas Blade Runner focuses more on AI and memory and questions what makes us any different from the replicants. Thus, Ghost in the Shell at the time was very much a Japanese story. However, many people make a strong argument that even though it started off as a Japanese story, its themes are more relevant and universal now more than ever. But even though I just laid out the history and some of the debates surrounding Ghost in the Shell, that does not matter because the point of this video is to lay out how the simple fact that a film is perceived as whitewash or is in fact whitewashed has a correlation with it being a financial blunder in recent years. In the case of Ghost in the Shell, its struggle began the minute it announced Scarlett Johansson as the major. News networks, blogs, and social media blew up with the main focus being on the whitewashing. Hell, that day on both Twitter and Facebook, #whitewashing was trending higher than the film itself. This made the film incredibly hard to market because each photo, trailer, clip, or piece of promotion would just reignite the flame and overshadow it. This made it near impossible to bring in new fans or to win over pre-existing fans that were already skeptical of the movie because negativity followed it wherever it went. So by the time the film rolled around, it barely won over any new fans, it continued to be shrouded in controversy, and Scarlett Johansson was not nearly a big enough draw. I want to harp on that last point real quick, because Scarlett Johansson was not enough to sell the movie domestically or worldwide. The reason I'm harping on this is because the main reason why studios get an already established actress or actor is because they believe they will help sell the movie. That is simply not the case, and I hope to expand on that in a future video. But in the context of this video, it is important because if we look back at the list of whitewashing controversy films again, almost all of these films have a budget of above $100 million.
It is most true. True?
The fact is that it is easier to get investors to hop onto a film if they think it has star power. It isn't as if Hollywood doesn't want more diversity, and most people in Hollywood would gladly stay faithful to the culture or race of the original work, but they can't afford to do so. Most investors believe that a star actress or actor who is usually white will sell more tickets and get people's butts in the seats. Whether they are misguided or not, which I think they are the ones that fund these big budget movies. The higher the budget, the more there is to lose, and the more likely it is to stray away from the source material.
Fools.
Getting away from Ghost in the Shell, let's look at Lone Ranger, which I think we can all agree is whitewashed. These studios and investors thought that Johnny Depp was such a large draw that they had him play Tonto, a Native American. Disney not only bet on Lone Ranger being a strong enough pre-existing property, but on this man. They threw $225 million on the production cost alone, and almost $150 million on marketing. The golden rule in Hollywood is that a film needs to double its pre-release cost. That means Lone Ranger needed roughly $750 million to be considered a success, but only made $260 million worldwide.
Something very wrong with that horse.
Just like Ghost in the Shell, it was shrouded in controversy over this choice and failed. Again, it was not the sole reason. Hollywood's over-reliance on pre-existing properties, uninspired and watered-down stories, and complete misreading of its audience had a larger or equal role in its failure. That is why it is baffling to me that after consistent flops of films with whitewashing, or perceived whitewashing, that these studios, producers, and investors have not changed a damn thing. And I'm not trying to cherry pick here. If you look at the list of the 32 films with whitewashing controversies in the last decade, some of course having larger controversies than others, only 6 were truly financially successful. And of those 6, you have 1 that is a Marvel movie, and Marvel films seem to be immune to everything, 1 that was a sequel to a successful first film, and 2 films that whitewashed 2 minor characters.
You're a lucky baby with Franklin D for your name. Mrs. Jones's baby boy is a welcome resident.
The last point I want to bring up to drive home my point is that we need to look at who is watching most films. The 3 major cities that watch films and contribute a large chunk to a film's box office is New York City, LA, and Atlanta. All these cities are largely Democrat, liberal, and progressive, and thus these cities are for the most part less likely to see a film if it goes against their values, just like the more conservative South and Midwest are less likely to see a film if it goes against theirs. If a film is labeled as whitewashed, or is indeed whitewashed, then the box office from Hollywood's 3 major domestic markets is heavily diminished, and historically foreign markets do not save these films' box offices.
That's gotta hurt. Hey, Chi-Chi!
Now, I'm not saying that all these films warrant being labeled as whitewashed and subsequently deserve a bad box office. I'm simply pointing out a trend and showing how it affects the film industry financially. However, I do hope for a Hollywood that doesn't think it needs to place a white actress or actor in the lead role in order for a film to do well, but the best actor or actress that represents and can do justice to the source material and the culture that it stems from. Hey guys, just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see some constructive debate and conversation happening in the comments section. Thank you again, and hope to see you next time.